direction, but we've not moved away from the foundation of Proverbs. The goal of wisdom is not merely to make us smarter, more successful, or even better behaved. Wisdom is meant to teach us to trust the Lord. That also explains why Proverbs can use observations that may have existed outside of Israel. The observation may be true, but Proverbs places that truth where it belongs. Wisdom does not terminate in the principle. It leads us to the Lord. Wisdom causes us to see God properly. Verses 20 and 21 then explain what this wisdom prepares the learner to do. It says, Have not I written to thee excellent things in counsel and knowledge, that I might make thee know the certainty of the words of truth, that thou mightest answer the words of truth to them that send unto thee? The person who has listened, received, and internalized wisdom is now prepared to communicate it faithfully. There's an important difference between repeating something and having something within you. Solomon's not describing someone who's merely memorized the right answers. He's heard truth, applied it to his heart, learned to trust the Lord through it, and now truth is ready on his lips. He is speaking, he is teaching, he is sharing from real life experience. That gives us the framework for everything that follows in these sayings. Hear the truth, apply it in your heart, trust the Lord, then be prepared to speak the truth. The collection may be new, but the point has not changed. Wisdom begins with the Lord. It forms the person who receives it. Then it becomes visible in a way that person lives and speaks. It all starts with him, but it does not stop there. It shapes us, and it becomes visible to those that are around us. After calling us to hear wisdom, apply it to our hearts, and trust in the Lord, these sayings send us into the world where that wisdom has to be lived, because wisdom is not something isolated to a church building. And almost immediately the focus turns toward how we treat people who are vulnerable. So let's look at verses 22 and 23. Rob not the poor, because he is poor. Neither oppress the afflicted in the gate. For the Lord will plead their cause and spoil the soul of those that spoil them. Notice the reason that Solomon gives. He does not simply say that oppressing the poor is wrong. He tells us the Lord takes their treatment personally. They matter to him. The poor person may not have the resources to defend themselves. The afflicted may not have enough influence to make anyone listen. But that does not mean that they are without an advocate. And Solomon is saying is that God takes notice of all. The Lord will plead their cause. That same thought appears again at the other end of the group of sayings in Proverbs chapter 23, verses 10 to 11. And it says, Remove not the old landmark, and enter not into the fields of the fatherless, for their Redeemer is mighty. He shall plead their cause with thee. These two passages function almost like bookends, one at the beginning and the other at the end. The section begins and ends with a warning about taking advantage of people who are unable to protect themselves. The details matter. The gate was more than the entrance to a city. It was where legal matters were decided. So Proverbs 22:22 is not merely describing someone privately mistreating a poor person. There's a warning there about using a position of power or a system of justice against someone who does not possess the same power. And this is what is being said about the gate. This is not some private place. This is a public injustice that is taking place. The landmark carried similar significance. These boundaries marked property. Moving one was not simply rearranging a stone. It was taking what belonged to someone else. And when the field belonged to the fatherless, the temptation would have been obvious. Who's going to stop you? Proverbs answers that question. Their Redeemer is mighty. They may not have someone standing beside them who is powerful enough to stop you, but they are not undefended. This gives us a very important perspective on justice. Proverbs does not present concern for the vulnerable merely as a social issue. it connects our treatment of people directly to our fear of the Lord. So that means wisdom has to affect the way we use whatever power we possess. Most of us will never sit as elders at a city gate, and we are probably not tempted to move our neighbor's property marker in the middle of the night. But we do find ourselves in relationships where there is an imbalance of power. We may have more money. We may have more authority. We may understand a system better. We may have a stronger voice. We may simply be in a position where someone else cannot easily push back. The question is not merely, can I do this? Wisdom asks, how am I treating the person who cannot do anything about it? That's where these ancient situations become very current to us. The test of our character is not only how we treat people who can benefit us or challenge us. Sometimes it's revealed even more clearly by how we treat someone who has nothing to offer us and very little ability to resist us. And there's another side to this. These verses do not only warn the person with power, they offer reassurance to the person without it. The Lord sees. The poor may be ignored at the gate, but the Lord sees what happened at the gate. The fatherless may not notice immediately that the landmark has been moved, but the Lord knows where it belonged. Human vulnerability does not equal divine neglect. And that is the consistent concern running through these sayings. Wisdom does not allow us to separate our fear of the Lord from the way we treat people. The Lord who tells us to trust him in verse 19 is the same Lord who tells us in verses 22 through 23 that he cares about what happens to the vulnerable. So when Proverbs sends us out to interact wisely with people, one of its first questions is not how well we can navigate powerful relationships. It's what do we do when we're the one with the power? Do we treat people right? So it continues on, and we see another set of wise interactions. And as we keep moving through these sayings, Solomon stays in a world of everyday relationships. But now the setting becomes more personal. Twice we're invited to a meal. And the first meal is with the ruler, Proverbs 23:1. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee. The second is with a stingy man. Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. In both situations, Solomon tells us not to be distracted by what is on the table. And this is important. The food looks good. The setting may be impressive. The person hosting the meal may have wealth, influence, or status, but wisdom does not allow appearance to make the decision for us. Wisdom looks deeper. With the ruler, Solomon warns the son to restrain his appetite. The language is intentionally strong. And put a knife to thy throat if thou be a man given to appetite. Proverbs 23:2. That is extreme. The point is not self-harm. Solomon is stressing self-control. If we know that we're easily controlled by appetite, then we'd be better off to take that weakness seriously. And this is bigger than food. The danger may be the desire for wealth, may be the desire for access, it may be the desire to be accepted by important people, it may simply be the desire to enjoy what someone else can provide. Wisdom asks, what is really driving me here? That's the question. What am I really being motivated by? That question matters because the meal may come with expectations attached to it. Solomon calls the ruler's food deceitful meat. We're not told exactly what deception is, but the warning is clear enough. Do not assume that every generous-looking opportunity is harmless. This may connect with Proverbs 22:29. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. There's nothing wrong with being skilled enough to gain access to influential people. In fact, Proverbs commends this type of excellence and activity in work. But skill can get you into rooms that only wisdom can help you navigate. That's a distinction worth remembering. Opportunity can open the door, but wisdom tells you how to behave once you're inside. Between these two dinner scenes, Solomon turns directly to wealth. In verses 4 and 5, he says, labor not to be rich. Cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven. Again, Solomon is not condemning hard work. He has spent much of the Proverbs praising diligence. The issue is the goal. There's a difference between working faithfully and working to become rich. One is stewardship. The other can easily become obsession. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be rich. That's dangerous. We all should endeavor to work as unto the Lord and work with excellence, and we all should endeavor to do our best in our efforts at work. However, that is about stewardship. But if all we're doing is working so that we could just get more, that can quickly become an obsession. Solomon gives us one of the clearest pictures in Proverbs. Wealth grows wings and flies away. It's like Red Bull. It gives you wings. That's a problem with making money the object of our life. You can spend years chasing something that you cannot make stay. How many know that to be true, that you could work, you could save, you could put it away, and it's amazing. You could work for years to save, and in a moment, it'll be gone. Buy a house, and you find that out real quick. The picture forces us to ask a harder question. What have I allowed my heart to desire too much? And remember, the book of Proverbs is not just touching surface level stuff. It's really getting down deep to the core. What have I allowed my heart to desire too much? The second dinner scene, it exposes a different kind of danger. The host sounds generous. Eat and drink, saith he to thee. Proverbs 23:7. But Solomon immediately tells us that his heart is not with thee. His words and his heart don't match. It's hypocrisy. He offers hospitality outwardly, but inwardly he resents what it cost him. Eventually, the guest recognizes the deception, and what looked pleasant becomes bitter. Again, Solomon is teaching us to look beneath appearances. Not everyone who smiles is for you. Not every generous act comes from a generous heart. Not every invitation, is sincere. Wisdom does not become suspicious of everyone, but neither is it naive. Then verse 9 adds another warning. Speak not in the ears of a fool. He will despise the wisdom of thy words. That does not mean that truth should never be spoken to foolish people. Proverbs itself repeatedly rebukes the fool for the effect of helping them change. The point is that wisdom always knows where or when words will simply be despised. Not every conversation deserves unlimited investment. I should have put that in there, but if you didn't get that, write that one down. Not every conversation deserves unlimited investment. Not every conversation deserves an abundance of your thought life or time. There's a time to speak, and then there's a time to stop. This section also brings back another familiar figure. In verses 24 and 25, it says, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. The first danger we might think of is getting hurt by the angry person. That's where our mind would immediately go. Don't make friendship with the angry person, because soon they'll become angry with you and they'll cause harm to you. But Solomon gives us a different warning. You might become like him. That's the warning that Solomon gives. That's why relationships matter so much. Who is in your circle? Who speaks into your life? We tend to absorb the patterns of the people we stay close to. Their response becomes normal to us. Their language becomes familiar. And their anger starts sounding reasonable if we're not careful. Eventually, that what once bothered us begins to shape us, and that right there is a snare. Solomon keeps bringing us back to the heart, because every one of these interactions tests what we desire and whom we trust. See, the rich ruler tests our appetite. The pursuit of wealth tests our priorities. The stingy man tests our discernment. And the angry man tests our influence. What are we influenced by? And beneath all of it stands the same foundation we saw at the beginning of the collection, that thy trust may be in the Lord. Wisdom in relationships begins right there, trusting in the Lord. If my trust is in the Lord, I do not have to be controlled by access, appetite, wealth, approval, or the personalities of the people around me. If my trust is in the Lord, I do not have to be controlled by access, appetite, wealth, approval, or the personalities of the people around me. I can see clearly because my heart is anchored somewhere else. Chapter 23, verse 12 begins another call to wisdom, and notice where the emphasis falls. Apply thy heart unto instruction and thine ears to the words of knowledge. We've seen this thought throughout Proverbs. Wisdom certainly involves what we know, but it cannot stop with what we know alone. The instruction that enters our ears must reach our hearts. It's got to move from being head knowledge to heart changing. That becomes even clearer as the Father continues. My son, if thine heart be wise, my heart shall rejoice, even mine. The Father is not simply concerned that his son knows the right things. He wants his son to become wise. And there is a difference. You can know what wisdom says and still choose folly. You can know the right path and still walk another one. So the Father's concern reaches deeper than information. He's after the heart. He's wanting to make sure that it's not just knowledge, but that it's something that has impacted him, his son, at the very heart. That context is important because right between verses 12 and 15 are some of Proverbs' strongest words concerning discipline, and often misquoted. So we're going to see what it actually says. Proverbs 23:13-14 says, withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with the rod, and shalt deliver his soul from hell. Doesn't say spare the rod, spoil the child. That's actually what it says. It says beat him. It won't kill him. That's my version of it. We've encountered this principle already in Proverbs. Folly is bound in the heart of a child, and therefore children need correction. Whatever conclusions we reach about the specific form that discipline should take, however you introduce discipline in your family and with your children, we should not miss the larger point of the text. Loving a child requires more than affirming them. It also requires correcting them. And the surrounding verses keep that correction in proper context. This is not an angry parent looking for an excuse to punish a child. Listen to his heart. My son, if thine heart be wise, my heart shall rejoice. If you have obtained wisdom, if your heart is changed by the wisdom, by the knowledge that you have in your head, if that gets into your heart and it changes you in a positive way, I'll rejoice. This is what he says. So this is not somebody that's angry just wanting to beat a child. He corrects because he cares where his son is going. That distinction is important. Discipline is not supposed to be the release of a parent's frustration. It has a purpose. And Proverbs sees two paths, one leading toward life and the other toward death. A parent who sees a child walking toward folly does not simply stand back and watch. The goal is not punishment for punishment's sake. The goal is direction. And that becomes explicit a few verses later. Hear thou, my son, and be wise, and guide thine heart in the way. There it is again, the heart and the way. The father cannot make his son's heart wise. Eventually, the son has to guide or direct his own heart, but the father can teach him. He can correct him. He can establish boundaries and consequences while the son is young so that he learns there's a difference between wisdom and folly. And that runs against the idea that love simply allows a child to discover his own path. Proverbs begins with a very different assumption. A child does not naturally possess the wisdom necessary to direct his own life. He needs instruction. But this section is not only about children. The Father's word exposed something every one of us has to deal with. Our hearts are always being pulled somewhere. And that's why it says in Proverbs 23:17, let not thine heart envy sinners, but be thou in the fear of the Lord all the day long. Notice the contrast. You will envy sinners or fear the Lord. These are the two options here. Why would someone who has been taught wisdom envy someone that's walking in folly? Well, if we're honest, it's because sometimes folly looks like it's working. We can know where a path ultimately leads and still look at someone further down that path and wonder why they seem to be doing so well. We see what they have, we see what they get away with, and we see what appears to be success. And our heart begins drifting toward what our mind knows is foolishness. So Solomon does not merely say, don't sin. He says, let not thine heart envy sinners. Don't even envy them. Deal with the desire before it becomes the direction. And then he gives the alternative. Be thou in the fear of the Lord all the day long. Not occasionally, not simply when you're making a major decision, all the day long. The fear of the Lord is what keeps the heart anchored when what we see around us makes folly look attractive. And then comes the reason. For surely there is an end, and thine expectation shall not be cut off. Wisdom requires us to look further than what is happening right now. The sinner may appear successful right now. Doing right may appear costly right now, and discipline may be painful right now. But Proverbs keeps teaching us to look at where the path ends, because ultimately it's about where is this going to take me, not what does the journey look like. Where will I end up when this is all said and done? That's why the Father cares so deeply about his Son's heart. He's not merely trying to produce good behavior today. He's preparing his Son for where his choices will eventually take him. The heart determines the direction, and the direction eventually determines the destination. So the Father's appeal is filled with both love and hope. Apply your heart to instruction. Do not allow your heart to envy sinners. Continue in the fear of the Lord. Direct your heart in the way, because there is a future, and the path of wisdom is still the path that leads to life. The Father has been talking about the heart. Apply your heart to instruction. Do not let your heart envy sinners. Direct your heart in the way. Give me your heart. Now he shows us what happens when our appetites begin directing the heart instead. Verse 20 and 21 of chapter 23. Be not among winebibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh, for the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. We tend to treat drunkenness much more seriously than gluttony, but Proverbs puts them together because the underlying problem is the same. Neither appetite is being governed. Appetite is governing the person. That's bigger than alcohol or food. The issue is whether I can tell my desires no. There's nothing inherently wrong with eating, and Proverbs does not condemn wealth, pleasure, or celebration either. The problem begins when something good becomes something that controls us. This is why this fits so naturally with the Father's earlier instruction, when he said, hear thou, my son, and be wise, and guide thine heart in the way. Someone is going to do the guiding. Either wisdom directs my appetites, or eventually my appetites begin directing me. Proverbs then spends an unusual amount of time showing us exactly what that looks like with drunkenness. It begins with 6 questions. Who hath woe? Who hath sorrow? Who hath contentions? Who hath babbling? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes? Look at the picture that Solomon paints. There is sorrow, conflict, words that should never have been said, injuries that should never have happened, physical evidence of what the person has been doing. And then comes the answer. Proverbs 23:30, they that tarry long at the wine. Notice the language. They tarry there. This is no longer something they occasionally enjoy. It has begun consuming their time and their attention. Verse 31 goes even deeper. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth his color in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. The problem has moved from consumption to attraction. He has become captivated by it. He watches it, he desires it, his attention has become fixed on the very thing that is destroying him. And Solomon refuses to let us judge it by how it looks at the beginning. At the last it biteth like a serpent and stingeth like an adder. Verse 32. What goes down smoothly does not necessarily end smoothly. And that's one of the repeated lessons of Proverbs. Folly often looks attractive at the beginning. If it looked like death when it first appeared, very few people would choose it. Wisdom looks at the end of the path, however. Then Solomon takes us inside the experience. Thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thy heart shall utter perverse things. Verse 33. The restraint that wisdom has been teaching throughout this chapter begins disappearing. His vision is affected. His judgment is affected. His speech is affected. Then his stability is gone. Yea, thou shalt be as he that lieth down in the midst of the sea, or as he that lieth upon the top of a mast. Imagine trying to sleep on top of a ship's mast while the sea moves underneath you. Everything is moving. You've placed yourself somewhere where you were never safe to begin with. But perhaps the saddest part of the picture is the end. They have stricken me, shalt thou say, and I was not sick. They've beaten me, and I felt it not. When shall I awake? I will seek it yet again. That's verse 35. What it's telling us is that he's hurt. He's hurt by it. He's experienced the consequences. He can describe what it has done to him, and his conclusion is troubling. Here's the conclusion. I want another drink. That's what makes the passage so disturbing. The consequences that should have awakened him have not changed his desires. He does not merely have an appetite anymore. The appetite has him. And this is why it's important for us to be very much aware of our appetites not becoming that which governs our lives. I'm not just talking about appetite for food, but appetites for anything. If there is something that we will not give up to God, then it's a problem. That's why this belongs in the section about the heart. See, Solomon is showing what happens when desire is repeatedly indulged rather than governed. The principle reaches beyond alcohol and food. There are desires that promise pleasure but gradually demand more of us. It's possible for us to reach a point where we recognize the damage, experience the consequences, and still find ourselves wanting to return to the thing that caused them. Ask an addict why they won't give it up. They love it. It has a hold of them. And yes, we often tend to go to that extreme, but we have to bring it back and make it personally. What in my life do I know is not good for me, but I keep going back to it? Might be a little thing, but what is it that, what appetite is governing me instead of being governed by me? Proverbs is teaching us to deal with our desires before they become our masters. Deal with our desires before they become our masters. And that's why the answer is not simply stronger self-control. The Father has already given the foundation. Let not thine heart envy sinners, but be thou in the fear of the Lord all the day long. God is right here with me every part of my day. I live my life before him. It is to honor him, to respect him. That's what the Father is saying has to be the motivating factor. The issue is what governs the heart. And that thought carries into chapter 24. Be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them, for their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talketh mischief. Again, Solomon takes us beneath behavior to the heart. The drunkard's problem is deeper than the cup, and the glutton's problem is deeper than the meal. The evil man's problem is deeper than the violence coming from his lips. Proverbs keeps pressing toward the same question. What has my heart? Because whatever captures the heart will eventually begin directing the life. has my heart, because that's what's going to direct my life. Against that picture of misguided hearts, Proverbs 24 gives us something better to desire. It says, through wisdom is a house builded, and by understanding is it established, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. We've seen this house before back in Proverbs chapter 9. Wisdom buildeth her house and invited people inside. And now we're reminded what wisdom builds. See, folly consumes and wisdom builds. Folly leaves people unstable and wisdom establishes. Folly promises something desirable and eventually takes from us, while wisdom fills the house with precious and pleasant riches. So when Solomon tells us not to envy people, he's not merely telling us what we should avoid. He's showing us something better. Here it is. Stop envying what folly appears to have and look at what wisdom actually builds. And what wisdom builds has strength. A wise man is strong, yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. This is not physical strength. It's a strength to navigate life well. Verse 6 applies even to warfare. Victory requires wise counsel. And that becomes especially important when life becomes difficult. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. That's 24:10. The day of adversity reveals what is there in us. It's easy to appear strong when nothing is pressing against us, but wisdom gives us something that can hold when life becomes difficult. And Proverbs never promises that wisdom means that we will not fall. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again. That's an important distinction. The difference between the righteous and the wicked is not that one never falls. In the picture Solomon gives us, the righteous falls and rises. The wicked falls and they fall into calamity. There's resilience in the life built by wisdom. But even here Solomon guards our hearts. When the person who opposed us falls, wisdom does not give us permission to celebrate. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth. Again, notice where Solomon goes. Let not thine heart be glad. We can oppose what someone does without taking pleasure in their destruction. We can want justice without wanting revenge. The fear of the Lord governs us even in the way that we respond when an enemy falls. Then Solomon returns to the issue of envy. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked, for there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. Why not envy them? That's the question that we might have, because you're looking at the wrong part of the story. Earlier, Solomon said of wisdom, there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. Now he says of the wicked, there shall be no reward to the evil man. One has a future, and the other does not. So once again, Proverbs brings us back to where wisdom has already begun. My son, fear thou the Lord. After all the warnings about appetites and wealth and relationships and adversity, enemies, evil people, the issue's not changed. It's the fear of the Lord. And that's what keeps us from envying people whose lives look attractive now, but whose path is taking them somewhere we do not want to end up. So, the final section of Proverbs 24 reads almost like an appendix to the 30 sayings, but the concerns are familiar. Much of it comes down to 2 ordinary areas of life: our words and our work. First, our words. It's not good to have respect of persons in judgment. Truth cannot change according to who is standing in front of us. Truth should not change according to who is standing in front of us. If someone is wicked, wisdom does not call him righteous because we like him, agree with him, or benefit from him. He that saith unto the wicked, thou art righteous, him shall the people curse. That principle matters anywhere judgment is required. Partiality corrupts our ability to see clearly. And verse 8 makes it personal. Be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause, and deceive not with thy lips. Then Solomon adds this, say not, I will do so to him as he hath done to me. I will render to the man according to his work. Now we see one reason our words can become dishonest. We want to get even. Here's the truth, though. Once revenge enters our heart, it becomes much easier to justify words we would otherwise recognize as wrong. Wisdom refuses to manipulate truth even when we believe someone deserves what's coming to them. Then Solomon turns from our words to our work. Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. There is a simple order here. Take care of what provides before building what consumes. Do the necessary work first, think ahead. Wisdom does not merely ask what we want to build, it asks whether we've prepared ourselves to sustain it. And finally, an old friend returns, the sluggard. I went by the field of the slothful, by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. Proverbs 24:30. The field is overgrown, the wall is broken down, and everything shows neglect. But notice what the wise person does when he sees it. Proverbs 24:32. Then I saw and I considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. The wise learn from someone else's folly. That may be one of the simplest descriptions of wisdom in the entire section. We don't have to make the same mistakes that someone else makes. He saw it, he considered it, and what did he do? He learned from it. The sluggard did not have to teach him a lesson intentionally. His neglected vineyard taught it for him. And that's what Proverbs has been training us to do. Pay attention. Look at where paths lead. Notice what builds a life and what tears one down. Learn from the wise, learn from the fool, learn from success, learn from failure. Understand that in every situation there is something that can be learned. And receive instruction with a heart that remains anchored in that thing that keeps showing up chapter after chapter, the fear of the Lord. I've got to have the reverence for the Lord. It's got to be a respect for the Lord. It's got to be the governing thing in my life. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for this time. I thank you for your word. I thank you for these Proverbs, and though they may seem to be talking about things that are not common to us in our day and age presently where we live, God, I thank you for the practical application that is still found within them. God, I pray that you would help us to take this and let us not just be people who pursue head knowledge, God, but let us be changed by the knowledge. God, let our hearts be changed, let our activity be changed, and let people be able to look on our life and recognize that wisdom has had its work in us. I thank you, and I ask that you would be with us as we leave this place, returning us safely at the next appointed time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you. You are dismissed.
Thank you for joining us for today's service. We hope that you were blessed by what you've heard and what you've felt. If you'd like to know more about Harrison Hills Church, you can go to our website, harrisonhills.church, and you can click on the I Am New tab if you'd like to learn more or even plan a visit to be with us. You could also follow us on social media. Again, we are so glad that you have been able to be with us today, and we hope that God continues to bless you.